Hey demons, it's your girl Lucy, recording this video for a second time because it somehow didn't save the last time, so let's try this again. Today we are talking about my character Akari. Before I get into it, I would like to mention that I think in a previous video when I went over all of my characters, I called them Swift Stride. That was because before that video I had zero clue what their name was. They just didn't have a name, because as we all know, I'm the best at coming up with names, so I came up with that sort of right on the spot, and it has since been changed to Akari, but it's the same person. Anyway, I'm already very hyperfixated on my characters, and I need some other people to be insane with me, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. My character Akari. They are from the web series I'm currently working on called Villains in Training, and I'm making a pilot for it, so if you like the stories that I have about this character, you might like that too. Anyway, let's get into it. Imagine from the first time you opened your eyes, you were thrust into a dangerous world with no one to protect you. Akari has been out on the streets for as long as they can remember. When they were young, they were able to survive off of other scraps, but quickly grew to resent how unfair it was that others could have everything while they had nothing. For all of those rich people with comfortable homes and seemingly endless money, Gold Sky was a paradise. For a young child left alone on the streets, it was practically a death sentence. Society does not look kindly upon those who not fit into their mold. It showed the cracks in their perfect life and forced them to look at what others' reality was, and they did not appreciate it. Akari knew all of this, and if society was going to lock them out, they figured their rules didn't apply to them. They quickly learned that the art of shifting came naturally to them. They learned this when a group of older kids had ganged up on them, and they had been so startled that they had shifted into a hissing tabby cat and ran off. Out of all the things they could have changed into, somehow all they managed was a cat. Terrifying. But they weren't about to let this slide. If those kids wanted to play dirty, they'd bring bleach. Night had fallen by the time they took their place on the desolate streets. They had practiced their craft, perfected the art of looking the part, putting on a show. They knew that there was one thing any street kid knew to be wary of. It was ghosts. There were a lot of sins you must commit to survive, which was probably why supposedly enchanted items and spells that definitely worked for saving one from demons were so common in criminal circles. Not that they went poking around there much. They weren't sure if the stories were real. If anyone could live after death, aided by demons or angels depending on their life choices, was a mystery to them. They figured it was unlikely, though part of them sometimes wondered if this was just so they wouldn't have to linger too much on the consequences of their own actions. They didn't have to wait too long before their keen hearing picked up that a group of people were approaching them. By the sound of it, about 4, likely carrying guns or wands. They would be stupid not to. Akari ran straight towards them. Her silk dress mimicked that of a high-class citizen, with shimmering pearls hung around her neck and a neat bow atop her blonde head. She made sure her blue eyes were just a bit too visible in the darkness. The array of weapons and smoke bombs she had borrowed earlier were carefully hidden under her ruffles. Her new form was sweet, cute, harmless, rich. The perfect victim. Before the group were in her view, she began to call out the feeble cry of a child searching for their home. One that Akari had never had, but that this child was very familiar with. She had a nice warm bed and far more pillows than were necessary. She went to a pretty school with a pink backpack. Her favorite thing on the playground was the monkey bars. She enjoyed reading in her own library, where she could get lost in stories until her mother came and swept her up in her arms and kissed her on her forehead, and tucked her into her bed with too many pillows. Except now she was cold and alone on the streets. Akari did the best she could at feigning the wide, teary eyes and quivering lips of a lost child, one that had somewhere they were supposed to be. "Hey, little girl, you lost?" A boy with fiery red hair and a scar stretching across his freckled face stepped out of the darkness, doing a terrible job of faking concern. She could see out of the corner of her eye 3 others surrounding her. She sniffled and nodded. "Well, we can help you. That's a very pretty necklace you have on there. Mind if I see it?" He reached out before she could answer to touch the dazzling jewelry. She stepped back. "It was my mother's. She wouldn't like you touching it." "Come on now. I'm sure you were taught to share." He tried again more aggressively to grab it from her neck. This was when she let out a shrill, blood-curdling scream. Her body twisted and bent in ways it wasn't supposed to, and her perfectly straight teeth turned into jagged fangs as she suddenly raced towards him. He fired off some hurried shots from his gun in his fear that flew by her, sending a rush of adrenaline through her skin. She lashed onto him, growing her limbs to curl around him as he thrashed. His friends were sprinting down the street. She screeched after them a series of nonsense, throwing in just enough actual words to make them understand that she was coming for them next. That's when she took out one of her smoke bombs and threw it to the ground below them, unlatching just enough for him to slip out of her grip and run away in the blur of smoke. Akari shifted back to their usual green-skinned, yellow-eyed self, a wild spark in their eyes as they cackled with laughter. Now that they thought about it, they weren't exactly sure if those were the same kids as before. One of them had dropped their bag, and they wasted no time searching through it for all the scraps of food and coins they had managed to steal, eventually just deciding to take the whole thing so they'd have something to hide their trinkets in later. As they grew, they improved at their shifting abilities, and spent their time sneaking onto trains or buses to travel the country. They had learned never to stay in one place for too long. People would spread the word of a scheming shifter fast, and it quickly turned into a witch hunt. Shifting magic had stopped being taught centuries ago. Nobody trusted someone that they might not even know what they look like, that could turn into their closest friend, or be the fly on their wall. The paranoia really got to people. And now, if people learn you have a talent for it, you might as well be admitting to be a conniving black blood. In their case, it wasn't too far off, but it still hurt. So they traveled, slept on benches, under stairs, in abandoned lots, anywhere they could find, really. They shifted to fit who they were with, gaining the trust of any crowd with their endless performance, but never connecting with any one of them. People enjoyed their shows, believed their act, fell for their cons, but they made sure they never saw who they really were. Nobody would invite a scrappy shifter into their home without chains around their wrist and a gun to their head. Akari hated people. Sure, their things were nice when you could take them, but whenever they had the chance, they spent their time in the forest. Animals wouldn't cast them out if they couldn't find decent clothes to wear, or if staying still made them want to rip their hair out. At night, they sprinted with wolves, who accepted them into their pack as if they were family, keeping them company at times when the thought of going back to society made them want to scream. They swam with fish through twisting rivers and explored with them a whole new world underwater. They made friends with shadow creatures, beings that people either ran from or shot at for not fitting in with their regal griffins or cute house pets. Akari found them to be gentle and caring and gorgeous for the uniqueness of each one, even if they weren't as palatable as the world of Goldbloods wanted. They came to realize that people were all the same, cruel monsters even when dressed in fancier clothing. At least they knew what they were. They were someone who would stab you the second you turned your back, and take pleasure in the rush they got out of doing so. They would do what they needed to survive, become who they needed to survive, and keep doing so until they found a way to burn society to the ground. So that was Akari. Honestly, I absolutely love this character, and I think I might be pushing up their introduction in the series to the second or third episode, just because I want to be able to write more about them. I have a lot of fun things planned for them and my other characters, so if you liked Akari, maybe consider subscribing and watching the Villains and Trainings pilot when it comes out. Anyways, thank you for watching. Bye, guys!